Okay, so congratulations. We are now sort of ending the Ten Commandments. And so tonight we're going to finish the last of the Ten Commandments. And we're going to do Commandments 7, which is thou shalt not steal. And we're also going to do 10, which is thou shalt covet neighbor's possessions. And then also number 8, which thou shalt not lie. Now I'm going to do 7 and 10 together because in essence they kind of blend together well. So, all right, first off, what is the 7th commandment? Thou shalt not steal. All right? Now, at a first glance, it seems like, okay, essentially I would say, okay, if it doesn't belong to you, don't take it, next commandment. But it goes much deeper than just not taking what doesn't belong to you. And there's certain principles we need to apply to, it's not so much, am I just not taking what belongs to me, but am I using the goods that God gave me also for those that don't have? And do I have a proper perspective of material possessions? Okay? Now, a couple principles with the 7th commandment, all right? And principle number 1 is called the universal destiny of all goods. Okay? The first principle is essentially, and I'll explain what it is, the universal destiny of all goods. All right? Now, in the catechism, if you want to look this up in your catechism, I don't know if you brought them, it's numbers 2402, okay? And it says this, and also 2404 combined. And it essentially says this: the goods of creation are destined for the whole human race. In his use of things, man should regard the external goods he legitimately owns not merely as exclusive to himself, but common to others also, in the sense that they can benefit others as well as himself. Monsignor Pope was a priest friend of mine. He always says, the goods that you have are tainted. They taint yours, you know? In other words, like, there is the thing of private property, but there also is that the material possessions that exist in the world are not just for us to take for ourselves, but is to be used for all of humanity. Okay? Do you understand that principle? I'll get there, okay? Because you're like, well, what about my stuff? Can I just give it? All right, well, I'll explain that. Okay. All right, so a biblical quotation. Genesis chapter 1, verse 29 says, God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed and its fruit, you shall have them for food. So God created the world, and then what did he do? He handed it over to mankind, to Adam and Eve, okay? And we became, the key word here is stewards. All right, write that word down. Stewards of creation, okay? Now, what does it mean to be a steward? A steward manages the owner's property and does so according to the true owner's instructions and wishes. Okay? So it's almost like a tenant of a farm. All right? He lives there, he works it, but essentially it's not his, it's the big guys. And really, all of creation, in essence, even our bodies belong to what? To God. Okay? All right, now, now in the 7th commandment, there's some little humorous notes here. The 7th commandment enjoins respect, as we just read this, how he gave us the seed and fruit and also dominion over the animals. All right. So where does honey come in with the the use of goods? All right. So it says this 2417 in the Catechism said, God entrusted animals to the stewardship of those whom he created in his own image. Now we are once stewards of animals. All right. Now we're greater than what? Than animals. Animals were made for us. They were made by God, but for our use. Okay? And hence it is legitimate to use animals for food and clothing. All right? We wouldn't have leather belts and other such things, and we wouldn't eat eggs or eat meat if it wasn't for the animal kingdom. It goes on to say that medical and scientific experimentation on animals is morally acceptable if it remains within reasonable limits and contributes to the caring and saving of human lives. So when you get these commercials like, don't kill the baby rats. It's like, well, if the rats can help us cure humans, you can, right? I mean, in other words, some people, I think jaded humans tend to put animals as being more important than other humans. Now, we talked about this, you see the typical, what is it, bumper sticker, it's like, save the baby whales, and right next to I'm pro-choice. It's like, wait a minute, completely, not thinking correctly. So, can you hunt? Yes, but the rules of engagement also in hunting. If you're going to kill an animal, you must eat it, not waste it. It has to be, and anyone who's a true hunter knows, it has to be an ethical kill, and you don't torture the animal and stuff like this. There's sort of rules of engagement. But once again, the animal kingdom was made to help man, and we're stewards of it. Now we can't torture dogs and all these other things. That would be cruel, because they're also God's creation. And then it also says this, it is in 2418, in the Catechism, it says, it is contrary to human dignity to cause animals to suffer or die needlessly. I just said this. But it is likewise unworthy to spend money on them that should, as a priority, go to the relief of human misery. Now, so think about that for a second. If you have, you're spending millions and millions of dollars to save some animal, couldn't that be used for humans? It's just something to think about. To bring your dog to an orthodontist, I think is wrong. Just meet those dog owners that have the, clean their teeth. But, a lot of people, they treat their animals like people. And so, once again, it says, we're stewards, we have to take care of them. Now, we also have the right to private property. All of us, most of you have houses, cars, clothes, everything, food. And so, what does this mean? The universal destination of all good remains primordial, even if the promotion of the common good requires respect for the right to private property. Everyone has the right to private property. But where the church says is that if there are people in need, and we have the capacity to help them, that their right to the goods that we have trump our right to private property. Okay, so here's a great sort of rhetorical question. Is there any situation where a person could ethically take something that didn't quote unquote belong to them and it wouldn't be considered stealing? All right, St. Thomas Aquinas answers that question in the following manner. Let's say, for instance, I was starving to death. They decided to starve priests as a cruel punishment, and I went to John's house in Calvert County, and I knocked on his door and I said, "Hey, John, can I have some food in your refrigerator?" Now he's the only hope I have for food, and John tells me no. Okay, John goes in the back to grill up his steaks and locks me out of the house. And meanwhile, I'm just smelling this. If I were to go into the house and grab some food so I could survive, as St. Thomas said, it would not be stealing. I asked for it, he didn't provide to someone in need, and so my right to live trumps his right to keep his yogurt in his refrigerator. Okay? But that doesn't mean, now once, it's a need, not a want. And that's a very extreme example. But you see, that brings up the principle of the universal destiny of all goods, that we have an obligation to help those in need. All right, now, another principle when it comes to the seventh commandment is moderation. All right, moderation. What's the word moderation mean? It means the means between two extremes, and that we are to practice certain virtues. What's a virtue? A virtue is a good habit in our dealings with material possessions. Okay, so the church also gives us sort of guidelines that we should practice some sort of temperance or self-control with material possessions. Okay, now what are some of the principles? Okay, temperance. Okay, temperance means that I have a self-control with my desire for things. Okay, so shopaholics, people that just constantly just buying stuff on Amazon, left and right, and the husband's just like, "What are you doing? I got stressed out. I need to buy something. Make myself feel good." In other words, there's sort of we're falling into the deadly sin of greed, which is the insatiable appetite for more. And I mean, we have to really guard ourselves against this sort of tendency. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. Well, we have a drive where we constantly are always looking for the bigger, better thing. And I mean, let's just take technology for example. I mean, it's so easy after like 9 months or 10 months, you paid off your contract for your phone, and now your payments go down, and then you get that email, but now you can upgrade. And then they lock you into another $800 phone, which you have to go back and pay, these monthly payments, and in essence, in your mind, you justify it and say, I needed it. But no, I mean, you didn't need it at all. It's sort of a waste of money, you buy a new car, and there's nothing wrong with buying a new car, but the people that kind of flip their cars every 3 years, well, wait a minute, I mean, what's wrong with your car? Well, it's not cool anymore. I mean, in other words, you got to, now, we have to also realize that in our human heart, we just have infinite desires. Okay? And we're never going to be satisfied by anything on earth. And so we have to kind of control that appetite, because our hearts will only be satisfied when they're satisfied by God. That's why St. Augustine says, our heart is restless until it rests in you, O Lord, in his book, The Confessions. So moderation. St. Josemaria Escriva says, don't forget it, he who has most needs least. Don't create needs for yourself. And I think prayerfully you should ask yourself, do I create needs for myself with acquisitions? And I think all of us would say, yes, I do. And so check yourself on that, because once again, we live in a culture and in an economy that is in so much financial debt today. Do you know that our country is in so much financial bondage today? I mean, incredible amounts of financial bondage. I read something recently, and it says this, that we have a really amazing, outstanding revolving debt. And it was reported Monday, the Federal Reserve said 1 million Americans have accumulated 1.021 trillion in outstanding revolving credit card debt in June of 2017 for the year. That's a ton. I mean, this is buying things that I can't afford. And then what happens is you're actually paying what? Triple for it, and creating this financial bondage. The guy who is here, he said this, this record should serve as a wake-up call to Americans to focus on their credit card debt, said Matt Schultz, a senior industry analyst at creditcards.com. Okay, and he also put out a commercial for credit cards after his statement. If you want more credit. Okay, so paid for by American Express. I remember one of the coolest things growing up, was just a teaching moment for me, is I remember my parents had this ritual where after a particular dinner on a Saturday night, my father took out the credit cards, and in front of all the kids sacrificed them with a pair of scissors. And said, let this be a lesson to you. They threw them out, and they didn't buy anything on credit until all the debt was paid off. Proverbs 22 verse 7 says, he who lends to the borrower, he who borrows from the lender becomes a slave to the lender. Something like that. Proverbs 22 verse 7, look it up. But it basically warns us against borrowing all the time. And once again, the economy strives on what? On greed. And so we have to use the virtue of temperance. I read recently that 1/3 of the food produced in the world is wasted. 1/3 is thrown out. And in the world, every year, 1.3 billion tons of food gets thrown out in the trash can. 1.3 billion tons of food. And then we say people are starving. Well, wait a minute. I mean, I think probably 1 billion could be in this church alone after some of our dinners, I mean, in the sense that they're picky eaters and all this other stuff. In other words, is wasting a part of of what we're doing? And are we using the goods that God gives us well? All right, and that ties into the next virtue. So the first is temperance, self-control. And the next is justice. And this is a key word. First of all, what is the virtue of justice? Justice is the cardinal virtue by which we give others what they deserve. Okay? So anytime you hear the word justice, it kind of sounds a little bit, justice, But justice means basically giving God and others what they deserve. And when it comes to goods, the church teaches is that we have a duty to make sure that people have food, that they have work if we can provide it for them, and this is through our government, that people also have water, and even health care if they can't receive it. Now, how we do that, we have to, and there's all kinds of debates on how to do that. The church doesn't tell us how to do that, but some way we are responsible for each other as a human family. Okay, the church will. And so that brings us up into the last point, is we also have this solidarity, is the other principle here. So temperance, justice, and solidarity. Solidarity simply means is that we recognize that we are responsible to help people if they can't have food, shelter, and other goods, that we somehow provide for them in our surplus so that they have what they need. And that's why the church, the Bible and the church encourages us to tithe. Okay, you don't have to give to the church, but really you should give a percentage of your paycheck to a needy organization for people that don't have what they need. That's sort of a Christian duty. Okay, you can find a charitable organization as long as it's has the guidelines. It doesn't do anything with the money that's immoral. But if they're doing things like providing food and shelter and taking care of sick babies and all this, hey, go for it. I mean, in other words, we have a duty to do so. And that kind of goes into the point with solidarity. The church has always taught that we have a preferential love for who? The poor. Okay? I mean, think about some of the great saints. What's a woman that comes to mind right off the bat? Mother Teresa, okay? She had a great love for the poor. I mean, even John Paul II had a great love for the poor. All the saints had a great love for the poor. They saw them as other Christ. And remember, what does Jesus say in the Bible? What you did for the least of my brethren, you did for me, right? And so we've always looked at, we have this preferential love for the poor. I mean, I think that's why things like with the bread, the pantry, and all these are great things that every church should have some sort of social justice compartment where we're helping the needy. It's just part of being Christian. When we have to take care of all things, spiritually, but we also, there's a component where we have to exercise what's called the corporal works of mercy. St. Rosa Lima, when her mother reproached her for caring for the poor and the sick at her home, I think she dragged them into her house and started feeding them and giving her parents bed, but I think she went a little extreme. But she should probably ask her mom first. St. Rosa Lima told her, when we serve the poor and the sick, we serve Jesus. We must not fail to help our neighbors because in them we serve Jesus. And then there's a great story for all those that are becoming baptized. You are what's called a catechumen. St. Martin de Tours, who he himself was a catechumen, he was preparing for baptism, and on his way to work as a Roman soldier in the cold on his horse, he encountered a beggar in a little town called Amiens. I guess I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Amiens, it's Amins. Okay, the beggar was unclothed on the side of the road. He got off his horse. He took his sword, cut his Roman robe in half, wrapped the beggar in it. It was an old man, and he continued to ride to his battle station. And in a dream that night, when he was in his tent, he had a dream of Christ, and Jesus appeared to him in the vision, in the dream. He said, "Martin, a mere catechumen, has clothed me." So when he clothed this beggar, in essence, he was clothing who? Christ. And so we have to understand that we do have to help those in need. All right, so let's look at some of the sins against the seventh commandment. Okay, you can just listen to these, or you can just write them down. Okay, robbery. Okay, right. I mean, robbing people is a bad idea. Don't do it. I don't think I need to explain that. Okay, give me your money. That's wrong. Okay. Borrowing property without the intention to return it in a timely fashion. Right? If you grow up in a big family, this happens all the time. Where's my sweatshirt? Like 3 years later. Oh, I was going to give it back. It's been 3 years. Okay? It's a form of stealing. Okay? Here's another one that's very rarely confessed or looked upon. Poor performance at work. All right, so if you go to work and you're like kind of, on Amazon for about an hour and a half or playing, I'm not, as a boss, I'm telling you, when people are playing solitary or, they're by the coffee machine, like every time you go by there, or talking or about things that aren't work related, you're on the clock and you're getting paid to talk and play solitary. Of course not. You're paid to do a job, right? There's a great story about Blessed John the 23rd. He's the Pope, and he started Vatican II, and he was on a walk with one of the cardinals, and the cardinal said, well, how many men or how many people work in the Vatican? He said, about half. So, and I think, that's true. These cardinals are stealing from their boss, the Pope. Okay, so I think I tell the kids that too. Like, if you go to school and you're just zoning out, you're stealing from your parents. Like, no, I'm not. I'm like, yes, you are. Or your parents are paying, $5,000 to $6,000 for you to learn, and if you're just sitting there looking at the ceiling because you don't want to learn, you're stealing from them. I'm like, okay, you got a point. It is. And so, we have to, there's times where we're not as productive or we're tired, obviously, but, we have a duty to put in a full day of work, okay? Bribery, all right, the exchange of money and goods for unfair favors and advantage. Okay, so example, Hal slips his coach a pair of tickets for next game's professional basketball game in exchange for a guarantee they will make the high school team. That's not necessarily up and up. Identity theft, I don't think we need to go into that. Here's another thing, excessive gambling. Okay, so the question is Catholics, are we allowed to gamble? All right, the church says that it is a legitimate form of leisure, but once again, what's the key word? Going back to the board. Moderation, okay? So, dropping $20, on a slot machine, it's not the end of the world. Dropping 200 bones, it's a little more problematic, And then, if you dealt with, in my business, we have people coming to my office that, drop $2,000 because they have an addiction. That's a problem. You see? So once again, like, the church is great where we're not like against legitimate pleasures, but we just caution against what? Overdoing. Buying a lottery ticket, or my grandma would have bought a lottery ticket every day or every week, always was going to win the lottery, never did, and but there's nothing wrong with that. Buying a little scratchy thing, whatever, if that's your thing. But once again, the principle is moderation. Okay? And once again, why? Because there's so many people that you could have bought a meal with that. See, the principle is solidarity, moderation, justice, all comes together with that. Okay? Vandalism, obviously. Jeff and Steve throw rocks at the windows of a vacant house for fun. All right, that's not correct. Wastefulness, destroying or squandering property that could be used for the benefits of the needy. Example, Claude refuses to put away the milk and allows it to go bad because his brother is the one who took it out of the refrigerator, wasted a bunch of milk. Now mom has to go get another thing of milk because he didn't put it away. Once again, how much food is wasted in the world? 2 billion tons a year. Okay? And I think it's just sometimes with, eating and stuff like that, you want to try to not waste so much, Trafficking. These are all up on the board, by the way. Which we're here, trafficking. Okay, trafficking is stolen goods. Example, Clara steals a pair of earrings from a woman whose children she is babysitting and sells them on the internet. Okay? That's what's it. Usury, charging unfair interest rates. Okay? Example, a used car dealer preys on people with poor credit ratings by offering extremely high interest easy loans. Okay? PG County does it all over, right? Business fraud. Cheating clients and customers, breaking contracts, cheating employees, utilizing deceptive business practices. Example, Jane seeks to make an extra profit by baking cakes using a low-quality butter while claiming only to use the finest quality ingredients. Business fraud. Okay? In a sense, if you advertise something, we're meant to, deliver. Cheating. All right? that would be like cheating on tests, exams, at school, or whatever, on official forms and applications for financial gain. Now, once again, like if you go and you cheat on an application for a job, that's kind of stealing because you're giving false advertisement. Okay, so those are examples of breaking the seventh commandment. All right. Now, moving on, I want to just make a couple points here. All right, let's say someone is guilty of stealing. What's the responsibility of after someone has asked for forgiveness from our Lord? Restitution. Okay, keyword, restitution. Restitution means to try to repair the damage done in some way. Now, like say someone were to come to confession, bless me, Father, for I sinned. When I was a kid, I stole probably about $400 of vinyl records, from, RCIA records or something. Now, we as a priest would not command them to go back to the mall and own up to that, but you could say, well, maybe you could give that much money to charity to make up for the damage you incurred. Okay, so we wouldn't have a person like turn themselves in, obviously, because many years ago. There's actually a great story. Do you know who Scott Hahn is? Yeah, Scott Hahn is a great, anything you can read on him is fantastic. And he tells a story when he converted to the Catholic faith and he started like learning about the faith. He's like, wow, he looked back at some of his, when he had to do his first confession, he started to do sort of some soul searching. And when he was a teenager, he was stealing a lot of stuff from record places when he was a teenager. And he came up with a pretty hefty number of stuff that he had stolen. And he actually went, he was courageous. He went to the record store, this is years later, he's like, now he's in his mid-20s, or I think he's actually in his 30s now. And he had done this when he was about 18, so this is like, 13 years after the fact. And he just hands the check and he says, hey man, when I was a teenager, I used to steal from you all the time. He goes, did you have one of these conversion experiences? Because we're getting like one of these a week. And so a lot of times like these Christians would come back and then they would find Jesus and so the record companies loving these conversion things, we're getting all our money back, So it just shows you that, we have a responsibility to make restitution, okay? All right, economy and social justice. We have to kind of hit this a little bit. Once again, in terms of how does the church approach sort of the economic structures in the world? Is the church socialist? No. Is the church capitalist? No. We're neither. Okay, now where the church falls on both capitalism and socialism is we say we're neither, but the church always, because we are the bastion of truth, we say both things have problems. Okay? Let me go to the Catechism of the Catholic Church on this one. Give me 1 second, okay? It says here, any system in which social relationships are determined entirely by economic factors is contrary to the nature of the human person and his acts. And it says the church has rejected totalitarian and atheistic we have rejected, communism. We've rejected it because atheistic, okay, and socialism, atheistic socialism, we reject it, right? Because it basically said there is no God, and that the human person. The problem with communism and socialism is, essentially like the person works, and whether you're a medical doctor or working on an industry line, that the idea is everyone gets the same pay. You don't get rewarded for your work, and that's not really what we teach as Christians. St. Paul says that the labor deserves his keep. Okay, and people can become rich. We're not against this. Okay, so when you're undermining the person and a person doesn't get rewarded for their work, that's wrong. But on the flip side with capitalism, what's wrong with capitalism is that the bottom dollar becomes what? Becomes what's support at the expense of what? Firing people, because I'd rather have more money in my pocket than help this family have a job so that they can feed their family. Do you see what I mean? Now, I'm not saying that the person's a poor employee and you need to get rid of them, but if it's about, a lot of companies where they're just layoffs and the bottom dollar so my stock price can go up, that's a little bit problematic. Do you see that? Because what's happening is the dollar amount is more important than what? The people. Is everyone with me on that? See, okay, so we have to see this, okay? And then in the category, it also talks about human work. You know, the seventh commandment talks about the importance of work, and I think we already touched upon this in like class number 1 or 2, right? We talked about the dignity of work. Remember, work is actually proceeds directly from persons and given to us by God, and we were called by God in the book of Genesis to work. And what's one of the sort of most depressing thing for people is if they get laid off or they get unemployed, because there's a sense of what, not just the fact that I don't have a job, but I also can't provide for my family and I feel worthless, right? There's a sense of a loss of dignity when you don't have something to do, right? I had a very enlightening situation once. Is, you know, almost every day we have 2 or 3, you know, people come by the rectory, you know, asking for money, and you kind of, it's sort of a catch-22. You know, you're thinking, oh, so we do the security background check, you know, out of the heck with it, you know. So I kind of gave it a long time ago, but what I started to do is I make them work for it. Okay, what they do with it, I mean, that's on them in some ways, but I made them work for it. And I remember once this guy came to me, and he was pretty obvious he was a little bit blitzed, you know, you could smell it on his breath, and he's like, Father, I just feel like God's calling my name. I'm like, I'm sure he is right now. And so I said, well, what's the problem? He says, I just need money. And I'm like, you know, of course, there's that part of me, it's, you know, being a little bit judgmental. I'm like, all right. And then it said, you know, it was a hot summer day. I said, all right, man, look, I'll give you food, I'll give you $20, but you're going to cut my grass. And he kind of stopped and looked at me, and he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you're going to cut my grass. And he's like, all right. So, but really the sort of the grace of the Holy Spirit part of this was, as he's walking off, this dude, he had this big smile on his face. He says, I haven't felt so good in a long time. You know, he said, he felt like he did something. You know, he had money in his pocket, which maybe he's going to get another round, I don't know. He had food, but the important thing is he had a sense of dignity that he hadn't felt in a long time. Right? It's just really just kind of, at that moment where I saw the smile on his face, I'm like, that's essentially what the church is teaching, right? Is that we're trying to get these people their dignity back. We don't just give them money, but we're trying to restore them back to their sense of worth, their sense of dignity, okay? And for ourselves, I mean, we also have to realize that work is vitally important for our spirituality. St. Paul tells us, if anyone will not work, let him not eat, okay, in the book of Thessalonians. And we know this, is that work done well, okay, no matter what you do, work done well, it can be redemptive by enduring the hardship of work. And you know what Jesus, the carpenter of Nazareth, because remember, from the time he was 12 to 30, what did Jesus Christ do? He's a carpenter, right? It's just awesome. I mean, the guy who worked with his hands. I mean, they knew him. Isn't that the carpenter, Jesus? I mean, he was a worker. And he shows us also, that's why I have a great love for carpenters. I mean, they do what Jesus does, right? And you know, one time I was riding around, I saw this pickup truck, my boss is a Jewish carpenter. Okay, all right. He shows himself to be a disciple of Christ by carrying the cross daily in the work he is called to accomplish. Work can be a means of sanctification and a way of animating earthly realities with the Spirit of Christ. Okay? And so we just have to see that, you know, for our own spirituality, and with the seventh commandment, going back to a violation of the seventh commandment, doing work poorly is breaking a commandment, because it's such a gift. And God is telling us, do what I've asked you to do, but do it what? Well. When they talk about Jesus Christ, they said he does all things what? Well. And then, what is, you know, how do I do it? Somewhat well. Keep striving, you know, to do our work well. It's a great means of holiness. One last point here for those in charge of a business. It says this: You have an obligation to consider the good of the persons and not only the increase of profits. Profits are necessary, however. They make possible the investments, they ensure the future of the business, and they guarantee employment. Okay, so just, if you make it big, remember where you got it from, and also your duty to what? Help those underneath you. And don't lose track that they are people that work for you, right? Okay, and it gets tough. I mean, especially as a boss, you know, like, one of the hardest things to do is to fire someone, you know? And it's tough, but sometimes you have to do it. But that's also doing what's good for what? The whole company. So if someone's like dragging the company down, they might have an obligation to, all right, fine, you're not sanctifying your work, all right? And that's not necessarily wrong, but sometimes you have to make those decisions, and maybe they'll find it in other ways, okay? But it has to be just, okay? Also, just wages are part of our teaching. You know, you can't go beyond the minimum wage if you're hiring people. And can a person take a strike, or companies? Yes, if it's legitimate, when it cannot be avoided, or at least when it is necessary to obtain the proportionate benefit. Okay? I'm not telling you go out and have a strike, but I'm just saying the church is not against a recourse to strike if this stuff isn't happening. Okay? But a strike can only happen is if the employees are being treated poorly, not getting what they're supposed to be getting, and all these other things. It is that. Please don't do that at Sacred Heart if you work for me. Okay? All right. All right. Okay, so now we'll go into the 8th commandment, which is what? Thou shalt not lie. Okay? Hold on, give me a second here. Flip this over. Okay. I ran out of energy, so I didn't write them all out. Okay, 8th commandment, thou shalt not lie. All right. Monsignor Pope, he says this. Without truth, there can be no trust. And without trust, there can be no relationships with others. Let me say it again. Without truth, there can be no trust. And without trust, there can be no relationships with others. Okay? So, the 8th commandment is not just about, okay, if someone asks me a question, I'll give them a right answer. It means living in the truth. Speaking the truth. By our words and deeds. You know, Jesus came to give witness to what? The truth. Pilate asked him, what is truth? Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Okay, so right off the bat, it's interesting. The first thing that the Catholic Catechism of the Catholic Church speaks about, the Catechism of the Catholic Church speaks about, to many sees, is martyrdom. Interesting. Why would he talk about martyrdom in the 8th commandment? Because what is martyrdom? It is the supreme witness to truth. You know, what is one of the proofs that Catholicism is legit? Is there have been millions of people that have died for what they believe. Okay? Did you know in this past century, there are more martyrs in the last 100 years than there have been in all the preceding centuries going back to Christ combined. You know, people giving their life for Christ. Do you believe in Christ? If you do say you believe in Christ, we're going to kill you. Many have done that in this century alone. Okay, it's just a witness of truth. So the question is, when you have to stand up for the truth, would you at least be willing to die for Christ? Or do we, as Christians, compromise on the truth when it's not beneficial for us to live the truth? All right? Now, as disciples of Christ, we are called to seek truth and allow it to govern our lives through this grace, and this is called the virtue of sincerity. We have to show sincerity in 3 ways. Right, number 1, sincerity with ourselves. We must acknowledge the truth about our conduct, our intentions, our thoughts, our inclinations. And I think the problem is a lot of people are not even truthful about themselves. Why do I do the things I do? What's really going on in my life? Am I really sincere with myself? You know, my actions, my thoughts, my deeds? Can I even sort of look at myself soberly about where I stand with God? Number 2, Sincerity with others. We must be true to our word if we're going to have meaningful relationships. And then finally, sincerity with God. God can neither deceive nor be deceived. And we must constantly vow our lives by daily examination of our consciences. Okay, now, let's go into offenses against the truth. All right, in the catechisms, basically, you can go home and do this this week. Numbers 2475 to 2484. Okay, there's your homework. All right, now I'm going to go through this. All right, the first thing it talks about is false witness and perjury. Okay, now perjury is when a person lies on the stand under oath. That would be considered a serious sin because you said it. We talked about that right in the second commandment, where you made an oath but you broke it. But if you lie under oath, it's also a breaking of the 8th commandment because it's not true. And then it goes into, from there, it kind of ties into how we look at people, and do we look at people truthfully, and how we speak about them. All right? And the first thing it says, write this down, is 2477 in the Catechism, is that we respect for the truth, respect for the reputation of persons forbids every attitude and word likely to cause them unjust injury. Okay, so first off, it talks about the reputation of others. And the church has taught that every person has the right to what? A good reputation. Okay, so, I mean, in a sense, like every person has the right to a good reputation. When, you speak about someone, you can, in one sentence, you can ruin their reputation. Right? You can make one statement that's not true, and you get, okay? So that's the first thing. So how do we break that? Now, the first thing it talks about is he becomes guilty of ruining a reputation if you are guilty of what's called, write this down, rash judgment. Okay, now people say, don't judge, okay? Now, what does that mean? Now, if I see something, like if you went into my garage and we were walking on my bike, you put it in the back of your pickup truck, and you're driving off, and I see John do that, I'm like, he just stole my bike. But maybe John was taking it to the bike doctor to get it fixed as a surprise gift. Right? So if I go right out the back, now from my impulse, I'm like, knowing John, he's got a beard, definitely stole my bike. Okay? That's what guy with beards do, right? But I don't necessarily know that. I saw it. My inclination think he stole it, but there could be that possibility that he was doing something good with it. And it was going to end up back in my garage. Right, John? You want to steal my bike, right? All right. So it says this. A rash judgment is when you assume as true without sufficient foundation the moral fault of a neighbor. Okay? I used this example once I was preaching about a pro-life homily, and it's kind of fun watching people's reactions when you bring up something controversial. People, their body language is just so funny, And I gotta be guilty. I've been guilty of rash judgment when I look at how people react. But this one guy was in the back, and he had his arms like this. And he had just frown on his face. And I thought he's a good guy. I'm like, man, I didn't know. I'm making up, this is not his name. I was like, I didn't know Frank was pro-choice. Man, I'm thinking that as I'm preaching. I'm going to pray for it. And then, so after Mass, the guy comes up and Father, the best darn home we ever met. I'm like, oh. In other words, maybe the guy had gas, I don't know. He just sounded a bad day. In other words, so you're making a rash judgment, right? You don't know what was going on. Or, so how do we deal with this? St. Ignatius of Loyola is a very good way of dealing with rash judgment, okay? All right, so, and that's when you look at a way a person's dressed, the way they walk, and we all do it, right? In other words, when you're young, you ever notice when you're young, everyone's innocent, but the older you get, everyone's what? Guilty. It's weird, isn't it? Because, you've been hurt, betrayed, and all these things happen, all these memories, and so you just sort of lose your trust in you. You kind of lose your trust in people, so to speak. And one thing that happens, I think, as you grow in your spiritual life, that kind of you kind of go back a little to childhood and you're more trusting of people. You shouldn't be naive, like, okay, come into my house, and here, use my, whatever. So, but St. Ignatius says this: every good Christian ought to be more ready to give a favorable interpretation of another statement than to condemn it. Okay? So first off, like, you ever receive an email and you read it and you just jump on it right away because you're reading it a certain way? But what's the problem with emails and texts? This is why I just think that there's too much sort of social media. Is that you don't see the person's reaction. You don't know exactly how they're saying it. Or it could have been like laughing, but you didn't see the LOL, or, in other words, you can easily misinterpret a statement and you just get all angry. So the church would say, when you first read it, say, I must be reading this wrong. Or I must be seeing this situation maybe not the right way. Assume first what? Not the guilt, but what? The innocence of the other person. Because they might not know, even if they're doing something wrong, they might not know what they're doing is what? Is wrong. I mean, how many here have learned a thing or two about what you were doing wrong just in the last 4 weeks? Right? Okay, now, in a sense, if I judge you for that, you need to know. Right? So you have to assume, well, maybe they just don't know. Okay, so then it goes on to say this is, but if he cannot do so, let us ask him how the other understands it. Now let's go back to the John thing. So say I'm walking past and I hear John say on the phone, I got it, do you have the money? Now, that would be hard for me to say, yeah, John's just dropping it off to get it fixed. But then again, the money could have been from someone else to give to him to get the bike fixed. Right? Still, might be judging you rashly. Probably not. Okay. And it says, you go to the person and you ask how the other understands it. Now this is so good in like, how many people do this to their kids sometimes? People do it to their spouses. They have this like rash judgment, right? And the thing is, if you hear something, kind of say, you said something that kind of sounded maybe kind of hurtful. Can you explain what you meant by that? Right? So you give the person the chance to what? Explain themselves before you jump down their throat. Okay? I mean, this is true if you're a boss or a priest, and sometimes you're like, what did you mean by that? And you give them the opportunity to sort of explain themselves. Okay, but then, if the latter understands it badly, now let's say you realize they did do what you said they were doing, you are to correct them with love. All right, you got to call them out. And if that doesn't suffice, let the Christian try all suitable ways to bring the other to a correct interpretation so that he may be saved. Okay? Now, once again, a lot of people, they gossip, they talk about people, they backbite, but they never go to the person. And then you ask them, why don't you go? I don't want to hurt their feelings. Okay, well, first off, that could be wrong for you because you're enabling this person, you're talking about the person, and 5 people know it about except the person. So how are you helping them? Right? You have and one of the duties out of love is called fraternal correction. What does that mean? To correct a sinner with love. If they don't know, we'll teach them. Well, how are they going to know? You might be the only person that can help them in this situation. Okay? All right. Another thing is detraction. Now, detraction is the more formal word for gossip. Okay? Now, what is the definition of gossip? Okay, gossip or detraction is this. Without an objectively valid reason, you disclose another's faults and failings to persons who did not know them. Okay, notice, without a valid reason. Okay, now, if you knew something about someone and they were going to hurt themselves or they're doing something that might hurt them morally, sometimes you have a responsibility even to tell certain people. It's like, say like you catch a teenager smoking dope and it's like your best friend, the family lives next door. Maybe you have the responsibility to tell them, like, hey, your perfect kid, actually, I call them in the back there smoking dope, you might want to know about it, you know. I mean, they have a valid reason, they're parents, you know, and they're driving their car around the neighborhood, right? Now, if you go and like to the, sort of like the bunco game and you're like, oh, did you know what happened to Pam's son? And you start telling all the ladies about it, but you didn't tell the mother, that's a sin, right? Because what did you do? You just ruined the mom's reputation, the boy's reputation, and he didn't tell the mom, and he didn't have a valid reason to tell them, because they're not going to do anything good about it. Do you see the difference? If you have a valid reason to tell them, and the person you tell them, are they going to do anything about it? If they're not going to do anything about it, don't tell them. Tell someone who can do something about it. You know, priest, a parent, teacher, you know, a lawyer, police officer. They'll do something about it. Okay? So, once again, is a lot of people, they talk about people's faults, but they never go to the person, and they never go to the person that can help them. Why? Lack of charity. Lack of charity, you know? St. Philip Neri, he had a great way of dealing with this. You probably heard this anecdote. You heard the thing about the pillow? Okay, maybe you did. Sorry, I'm going to hear it again. All right, in the 16th century, St. Philip Neri, he was very humorous priest, and a great sense of humor. And there was a woman who just had this problem with gossiping, and so he just said, all right, lady, he says, I want you to go get a pillow. Back then it was, you know, everything was a feather pillow. And he says, I want you to go to the top of the church bell tower. He opened the door. When you get to the top, I want you to rip open the pillow and shake out the feathers. Okay? And so she kind of, you know, shakes out the feathers. And then, you know, and then he turned to her and he said, now I want you to go and pick them all up and put them back into the pillowcase. And so she's like, okay. She goes downstairs, and after like 10 minutes, she said, this is impossible. They're blowing all over the place, and they'll never be able to do it. And he said, so with your words. Because sometimes, you know, you put out something inappropriate, you can ruin a person's reputation. Now, calumny is another form of this, but this is even more hurtful when you say harmful lies about a person, okay? Where you say something that's not true, and not only is it inappropriate to say what you said, it's not based on truth, it's even more serious sin, because it's based on a lie, okay? Another thing too is we are to avoid flattery, adulation, and complacence, which encourages and confirms another in malicious acts or perverse conduct. Okay, a typical example would be this, is like, you know, I think like this problem with human respect, where you're more worried about what the people around you will think than telling them what's right. Now, you don't have to be like, you know, a jerk about it, but if someone's doing something, you kind of say something to pacify what they're doing. An example, let's say a guy's at work and he's like, you know, shows, you know, all the guys, hey, check out this picture of this chick, you know, and you realize it's a completely inappropriate picture, and you're like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, good for you. And you're sitting there and you feel guilty about it because you didn't have courage to tell him, hey man, put that away. You are not only being a coward, you're also being complacent with this activity. You see? So like adulation, or, you know, I mean, this happens all the time in the workplace. You know, they're going on, you know, my daughter's getting married, you know, at this, you know, this beach resort. You know, they go to Sacred Heart. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, that's adulation. And you can say, well, you can say, oh, that's terrible. No, you should say that. No, you got to say it like that. Oh, that sounds terrible. Like what? Well, no, I mean, it might rain, and also it's sinful. No, I mean, seriously, but how many of you ever say that? I mean, I've learned over time just how to say it. Like, oh, that sounds terrible. And then they look at you, and then you have a teaching moment. You know, their jaw drops, and then you can talk to them about it, right? I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, but the thing is, just to say something that sounds nice it's wrong. You know. Boasting or bragging is an offense against the truth, right? You know, like sort of boasting and making more of something that's not makes it more than it is. And then finally, just lying. Okay, flat out lying. You know, I think sometimes, and most people, it's not the big lies, but it's like the little fibs, you know? Typical examples. All right, a cold caller calls, and hi, is Mr. Smith there? And you're Mrs. Smith. And you say, no, he's not here. Well, you just lied to him. What should you say? Hey, he's not available to talk to you right now. That's true. I mean, he's not available to talk to you. All right? All right? Or you can say, he doesn't want to talk to you. You know? Good. I mean, but I think we're so afraid, like this human respect thing. The other thing, too, is not everyone has the right to the truth. How many of you know you've got these sort of nosy people that want to know everything you're doing, right? So how do you deal with that situation? We got the, nosy Nelly who's trying to get all the stuff on your family or what's going on, or around the, in the office space, okay, and so forth. Monsignor Pope gives some great little advice on this. He said, there are, with times, people they're not supposed to know things. You can say, all right, a couple examples. Let me kind of change it a bit. All right, here's a funny one. Let's say, all right, awkward situations. Someone in your family gets their hair done and it looks strange. And they ask, do you like it? What do you say? Now, it looks wonderful. You lied to them. Yeah, all right, now I don't know. You can figure that out. How do you say it without saying it? It's interesting, it's different, you're starting a new trend, there's different ways to do it, but you just have to, once again, you can't lie to people, even the small, it's a lie, Now, there are professional secrets. All right, so, some of you are in the medical profession, legal profession. In my duty, tons of secrets, okay? There are professional secrets that we can't speak about, okay? And especially, people reveal things to me that are very personal. Actually, the utmost secret is, do we talk about, I don't think we talk about the sealed confession. Did we talk about that?
Yeah.
Ah, perfect. Did we? Okay. The sealed confession, all right, so anything that I hear in the confessional, when it deals with sin or information, is locked up in that conversation. Okay? What we call it is the seal of confession. Okay, that means that if you tell me something about yourself that you did that was sinful, whether serious or not serious, I am bound by God not to divulge that to anyone, even to yourself. Okay? And if I were to tell anyone and name the sin and point it where the person can figure out who the person was that did the sin, especially if it was a serious sin, a priest is automatically excommunicated without even being proven of doing it. It's automatic excommunication. Okay, now why does the church put that very serious penalty? Is no one would go to confession if there wasn't a seal. Now once again, it's not just about that. That conversation between you and Christ and the priest is simply the mediator, the intermediary. Okay? In Boston, actually, where they're getting dumped on with snow right now, as we speak, they were trying to pass a law that if a person came to a priest and confessed sexual abuse, that the priest should be bound to speak about that outside of confessional. And we said, sorry, it doesn't matter what kind of sin, we can't. Okay? And it was to the point they were going to throw priests in jail if we didn't do it. In other words, but once again, we can't do that because where do you draw the lines? But the seal is there. There's a great movie about this, if you like old-fashioned movies. It's called I Confess by Alfred Hitchcock. Have you seen this movie? It's really good. And essentially, Montgomery Clift plays the priest, and he, at the beginning of the movie, he is told about the guy confesses murder. And then, after the confession, the guy who worked in his rectory committed the murder down the street, took one of his cassocks, the priest's cassock, stole his cassock, and put the blood of the victim on his cassock and pinned the murder on the priest. And so the whole movie is everyone's out to crucify this priest, but he's bound by the seal of confession. It's fantastic, you know. And then how does he keep himself from getting the electric chair and sustain not breaking the seal, which he's not allowed to break? It's a classic Alfred Hitchcock movie. Okay, I don't know. I actually showed it at my house once with my brothers and sisters, and like, this is boring. And then go upstairs, they put like Dumb and Dumber on, and they're like, oh, come on, yeah, grow up, yeah. But anyway, it might be for a more mature audience, okay? All right, even though my brothers are in their 20s, okay? So, all right, in professional secrets, okay. The fact is, we are permitted, even obliged, to keep certain secrets. You know, if someone asks you to keep a secret and you don't, it's a sin, because you may, I won't break it, okay? Now, even then, Monsignor Pope says, we cannot say, if someone asks us about it outside of that conversation, you can't say, I don't know anything about that, or neither can we make up false answers to requested information. We must decline to give information that's probably kept secret, but we must still remain truthful. We must say instead, I am not free to discuss this matter with you now, or it would be inappropriate for me to comment on that, or why don't you ask him yourself? Or occasionally say, this is a private matter and not for you to know, but out of the conversation, you know? So, in other words, like, you just can't lie, you just have to withhold information, okay? All right? Everyone looks tired, you know? It's the weather, and terrible, isn't it? Okay, all right, let's close it down, and we're finished the commandments, okay? Praise God, we have, is it 2 more weeks? Wow, okay, 2 more weeks. What I'd like you to do is, Bill, do you have a piece of paper?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Winnell is going to put a piece of paper up here, and I'm asking